Good day, viewers. Welcome to yet another exciting interview of Speaking Plainly with Thabo Makweya of the Solomon Star. Honorable Premier, we are honored to once more have the opportunity to talk to you, although now we're talking to you as the lead authority of the province in terms of the economy, in terms of all the social aspects and so forth. And we have been observing the waves that you have made, and we know a lot of people have likened you to Sankara, and I think that is to be commended. We would, however, like to probe the sustainability of some of the issues that the Premier has raised, including I think there's a lot of confusion on the issue of the state mining house, and we're hoping that the Premier could please share with us exactly how the Premier envisions that to happen.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Makweya, for this opportunity, and we are very grateful that you guys have an interest to come and speak to us here in the Premier's office, so that some of the issues where there's a bit of confusion will be able to shed some light. I can just mention that it's quite hectic 2 months, and we are just trying our best to get things in place, look at how the provincial government works differently, introduce some changes, and the ultimate objective of whatever changes that we are bringing forth is to ensure that we try our best to improve the quality of lives of our people outside there. I'm quite conversant of the fact that there's expectations outside there, overflowing expectations, people of the Northern Cape yearning for change, but a change that is substantive, that will bring something on the dinner table, a change that will be able to house people who are staying in informal settlements, a change that will ensure that we get better outcomes in terms of our matric results, and a change that would ensure that an old lady who goes to Robert Sobukwe Hospital, when she gets there in the morning, she will be able to get her assistance and attention in the morning. She does not have to wait for the whole day. So that's basically the kind of change that we want to bring. And we said in our articulation that we are going to give practical responses to practical problems that are confronting the people of the Northern Cape. So that's what we've started to do, trying to come up with some practical responses to a whole host of practical problems which are there. It won't be an easy journey. It will be very difficult, fraught with a whole lot of uncertainties. But I think as the provincial government, we are ready to hit the ground running and ensure that we bring about that change.
Thank you. And we would especially want to critique the role that the private sector plays in assisting that, in ensuring that you achieve the objectives that you have set as the commander-in-chief of the whole province. It's not just government who accept it. But we are but weary that the private sector has not come to the table as much as they should have. We boast, government boasts that we've got lots of mines, we've got iron ore, we've got manganese, and fairly recently the solar programs that we've seen. But we are not convinced that the profits they have made have necessarily supported the vision that you have. And we want to know if there are any discussions on ensuring that, I always say you cannot legislate conscience. Now, the Mineral and Energy Department has put out a charter where they say mining houses should contribute a minimum. But we often find that most of these mining houses stick to the minimum, if not less. And I think Kumba is a classical example. In 2017, they paid off all their loans. I think in the last financial year, they made a profit of 45 billion rands. And of that, we are told less than 300 million rands actually went to the communities in the province. We'd like to know if the Premier has got a plan to engage them and make sure that they also come to the party.
Chip, after I got appointed as the Premier of the province, I've been engaging different stakeholders, and amongst those stakeholders is private sector. And I've got a program now of engaging your 10 biggest mines in the province. Because we can't take mining lightly in the Northern Cape. You've got your 3 biggest contributors to the GDP of the province. I'm sorry, you've got mining, agriculture and tourism. Let's leave out community services, which includes government expenditure. But mining, agriculture and tourism are the biggest contributors to our GDP. So you can't underestimate the role that mining can play in enabling us to achieve some of the objectives that we've set for ourselves. But we've started the process of engaging with all different stakeholders. I had engagements with Kumba, as you have mentioned. I have engagements with Nokia, I had engagement with Black business forums, I had engagement with a whole host of them. But at the heart of it is that all the private sector partners, they want to play an active role in enabling us to address some of the socio-economic challenges that we confront in the province, all of them. With all the engagements that I had, there is a great deal of willingness to participate in ensuring that we achieve the socio-economic objectives that we have set for ourselves. But there is one thing that is lacking. And what is lacking is the fact that we don't have a social compact in the Northern Cape. We don't have a platform where all of us can meet, share ideas, and agree on what is it that we need to do in order to move the province forward. So that's the reason why, as the province, we took a decision to establish what we call as the Northern Cape Growth and Investment Forum. In that Northern Cape Growth and Investment Forum, we want to strengthen the tricameral relationship, where you'll be having the government, you'll have the private sector, you'll have labor and communities participating. But also we are going to invite experts on different fields of the economy of the province, expert in mining, expert in agriculture, expert in tourism, will also be participating in that forum. Expert also in social development will also be participating in the Northern Cape Growth and Investment Forum, because we need to establish this forum that will serve as the basis on which we will be able to establish a social compact to move the province forward. If you look at what actually happened after post the Second World War, what we call now is the metropole or most developed countries in the world. That development, you look at the Scandinavian countries as well, that development is driven through social compact, where your private sector got actively involved to share the vision of the country and with specific responsibilities assigned to them, more than them having to pay tax, more than them coming with corporate social investment plans, and more than the social and labor plans which are there. We firmly believe that the private sector can play a much more active role in enabling us to achieve the vision that we set for the province.
No, thanks. We are encouraged by that, Premier.
Yeah.
We'd just like to, again, caution that are we not also likely to set up a trap where you have a very strong private sector and not necessarily well equipped in terms of human resources, public sector, that can ensure that not just for the engagements but the implementation of those, because the private sector sometimes unfortunately has a tendency of doing things that are only pro their agendas, and we're happy that the Premier is talking of the
Growth and Investment Council.
Yeah, the council and the compact. The implementation thereof, are you satisfied, having served in, I think, most spheres of government, including local government, that there is a visible absence of the necessary human resources or human capital to respond to the new challenges? Our fear is just that with all the good intentions that the Honorable Premier has, we may not have the officials in government, or as I said, human capital, to engage at the same level and make sure that these good programs are not just implemented but also sustained in the longer term.
Check South Africa, we've got a liberal democracy, and then I think that's the starting point. That's the political framework that we have. We've got a liberal democracy, and the dominant mode of production is capitalism. And because of that, we need strong private sector. With strong private sector, you'll be activating the engine for economic growth. Because we need the private sector to invest and in the economy in order for us to achieve some decent levels of growth. So we need a very strong private sector. But on the other hand, we need a very strong state with capacity to discipline private sector. Because if we don't have a very strong state capacity to discipline private sector, then we'll be sitting with a whole host of problems. Like actually what happens in India, where you've got a very vibrant private sector, very strong private sector, with high levels of poverty, because the state does not have adequate capacity to discipline markets. So what we need to find a balance between the two, where we've got a very strong private sector with capacity to invest in the economy and ensure that the private sector serves as the engine of growth. And then, but on the other hand, you need a very strong state. That's the reason we speak of a developmental state. The state must have capacity to discipline capital. And if the state does not have capacity to discipline capital, we'll sit with another whole host of socio-economic challenges which we are unable to address. So if we can just get that configuration correct and continue and robustly so with our program of building a developmental state. A developmental state is not just a policeman that looks at what private sector does. It's a state with adequate capacity to intervene actively in the economy and serve as a catalyst of growth and also give direction as to the economic trajectory in the country. So that's what we need. We need a developmental state, a strong developmental state with capacity to intervene in the economy and also with capacity to give direction which the economy must move into. So in the country now, over the past 25 years, there was a point where we had high levels of growth, which was about 6% growth after GEAR was introduced. We had about 6% growth, but that 6% growth, it was a jobless growth, which actually reflects on the capacity of the state to be able to discipline capital in terms of the outcomes that the states want to see. So our point of departure would be build a strong developmental state with capacity to discipline capital, and also what we need to do is to ensure that we have vibrant and dynamic private sector with capacity to invest in the economy to enable us to address some of the challenges that we are sitting with. One of the biggest challenges that we are sitting with is youth unemployment. If you come to the Northern Cape, every second young person you meet in the streets is unemployed, 50% with unemployment. Government won't address that problem alone. We'll need active participation, active involvement of the private sector for us to address that problem. And I think we've got an advantage which no other province have. We've got massive operations in the mining sector. We've got an agricultural sector that is vibrant and dynamic, but all of these must assist us to absorb young people and create opportunities for young people in the province.
And the capacity issue that, I'm sorry that we seem to be belaboring the point, is that you go to a municipality like Soplaki, you don't get the sense that the budget is consistent with, again, the vision that the Honorable Premier has. Yeah. Because you'll find that in such an important municipality, the budget for planning is less than what they spend on a Kharif, for instance. Yeah. And I think these are real challenges that we hope the Honorable Premier can pay serious attention to. We know there's a skills shortage in some institutions, and unfortunately it is the case that the private sector will attract most of the skills because they pay more. And in government, the provincial government will attract most of the skills. But the actual implementation, you remember, we've always said local government is the hands and feet of the government. That's where the real action takes place. We will be happy that the Premier just shares a little bit more with us on, practically what steps will be taken to ensure that you have people who don't just buy into the vision, but actually lives it. The passion that we have seen you with which you are carrying out your programs, if that can be seen in your officials to the lowest level of government, how does the Premier hope to address that challenge to make sure that as the private sector moves, the public sector also moves in tandem?
No, Chuck, we are sitting with a major challenge on how to improve capacity in municipalities. Capacity at different levels. Your planning capacity in municipalities, your technical capacity in municipalities, and also your financial management capacity in municipalities. We'll have to pay specific attention to this. And broadly speaking, also leadership capacity in municipalities. Because currently, as things are, it's quite clear that municipalities are a weak link in our journey of social transformation. And this weak link, which is municipalities, in the chain of social transformation, it's happening at a very critical level of service delivery, because municipalities are at the coalface of service delivery. That's where we would expect that most of our capacity, technical capacity, planning, and financial capacity is there in the municipalities. But there are two major challenges there which are confronting our municipalities, and particularly here in the Northern Cape. Number one is their revenue generation capacity. Most of our municipalities, each and every month, are sitting with problems and challenges of paying salaries because of the cash flow problems which are there. The cause of the cash flow problems is their revenue generation capacity. And then the other challenge which is sitting municipalities, as we have rightly mentioned, is the issue of planning. How they plan and how they implement their infrastructure programs. We got a report here just yesterday from the Office of the Auditor General that majority of the municipalities from the Northern Cape, which is a very poor province, are returning some of the MIG money, which is the municipal infrastructure grant, money that is meant to put up infrastructure, and particularly in the poorest of the poor areas. So that's one of the challenges that we are sitting with. Municipalities are returning millions and millions and millions of rand each and every financial year. So we'll have to look at addressing the capacity of municipalities, their planning and implementation capacity. That's one of the major weaknesses. But that's not uncommon in a poor province like the Northern Cape, because your bigger provinces like Gauteng, Cape Town, KwaZulu-Natal, they are the ones where skilled people would actually prefer to be, because there's much greater opportunities compared to the Northern Cape. So we'll have to work out our own dispensation in the province on how to attract and retain such skills, because people are moving out of the province. It's difficult to get a properly qualified CFO for small municipalities in the North. People are properly qualified and choose to go to cosmopolitan areas which are more vibrant, with much greater opportunities, which are your Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, and the Western Cape. So we are competing with provinces that offers much better opportunities than the Northern Cape. No properly qualified CFO would, out of her own volition, choose to go to Renosterberg Municipality, stay in Petersville as a CFO. So I think what we'll have to do is to develop our own dispensation, come up with our own dispensation, where we are going to ensure that we'll be able to attract and retain such skills. Without such skills, our municipality will remain dysfunctional as they are, because you don't have properly skilled managers, you don't have technical capacity, and you don't have financial management capacity. Majority of the municipalities get adverse findings from the Office of the Auditor General. Some of them can't even complete financial statements. But at the heart of that problem is revenue generation. Municipalities are bankrupt, they don't have resources. And at the heart of our failure to generate adequate revenue is the fact that 54% of the households in the Northern Cape are poor households. How do you expect poor households to pay for services at the municipality? So if you are sitting with a situation where 54% of the households are poor, they don't know where their next meal will come from, how would you expect those households to go to the municipality and pay for services? So the problem is structural. Up until we address the issues of structural poverty in the Northern Cape, there will be many other problems which will manifest themselves, and those are just mere symptoms of a much bigger problem where there's high levels of poverty. We are the capital of poverty in the country. Up until we address that, there will be other problems which will be sitting there.
I would like to venture into one other sector consistent with this, and that's the solar sector.
Yeah.
The fact that I think more than 60 billion rands has been spent in the last 6 years in the province. And we are now going to become a net exporter of energy. But because we have these different spheres of government, as the Premier, so what has the Premier done to ensure that there is interaction with your departments of energy and all of that, to ensure that we trap some of the benefits of all these resources that we have, because otherwise we will lament until we die and nothing will happen. So unless something very bold, which is what we hear you say, happens, we will have all the beautiful dreams and visions and nothing will happen. We are 25 years into democracy, and unfortunately you have the unenviable task of ensuring that what your predecessors have done is reversed and that these benefits accrue. And again, we'd just like to know at a practical level how the Honourable Premier will engage with your national counterparts to ensure that some of these benefits do accrue to the province so that we can change the fortunes of the citizens of the Northern Cape.
Check over the past 25 years. One of the things that we've been complaining about is that the Northern Cape serves as an extraction point, extraction of raw material, and we've been complaining about that. I'm certain there is no Minister of Mineral Affairs then and now Mineral Resources that the complaint was not raised with. We raised it out with all the ministers because the future of mining in South Africa is in the Northern Cape. That is just the reality. The future of mining is in the Northern Cape. When the president says mining is the sunrise industry, which we should use effectively to ensure that we stimulate growth in the economy of the country, he's actually referring to the Northern Cape. Because I can see the next 100 years of mining in South Africa here in the Northern Cape, nowhere else, because of the kind of mineral endowment that we have. And for the past 25 years, one of the complaints that we've been raising is that we are just a mere extraction point. You'll also see all the trucks which are carrying the raw material out of the province, damaging our roads. All of them, their registration plates, it's not Northern Cape. It's trucks from other provinces. It's either your GP and your MP and your NZ from KwaZulu-Natal. Because even the trucking industry that carry the products from your mining houses out of the province are not even registered in the province. You don't benefit from registration of those trucks. They are trucks from other provinces because the headquarters of these trucking companies are outside the province. And if you look at what is actually happening with operations in the province, we are just a mere operation center. But the headquarters of all the mining companies here, all of them are in Gauteng. Majority of them, they are in Gauteng. So what we are used for as the Northern Cape is that we are an extraction point. And if you look into that, if you want to be very analytic and very smart about that, you can better interpret that within the context of center-periphery politics. We are the periphery of South Africa. That's what we are, an extraction point where raw material is extracted and actually transported out of the province with very little in terms of secondary economic activities and beneficiation value adding. We've been complaining about that all the years. I can't remember a premier in the Northern Cape who never complained about that. I can't remember a provincial executive committee of the ANC that has never complained about that. I can't remember a single Lekgotla each and every year where we don't speak about it. We've been raising this issue all the years. Each and every time we get an opportunity to engage on it, we've been raising it as well in national platforms. So we took a decision that we'll have to find a way as the province to play an active role in the mining sector. We took a decision that we are going to establish a Northern Cape Mining Company. And that Northern Cape State Mining Company, its responsibility will be to intervene in the mining sector and play an active role on behalf of the people of the Northern Cape. And particularly if you look in terms of the different phases of mining, there's different stages of putting up a mining company and different stages of mining. You've got what we normally call as exploration, and then you've got the stage where you have to make application for a mining license. But we say this mining company will play a much more critical role with regard to prospecting, where it will have to establish where are these mineral deposits in the province, and also exploration, where we are going to embark on a process of laboratory test of these minerals so that we can establish what is the quantum of these minerals and what is the grade and what is the tonnage of these minerals. And then after that, we are expecting that this Northern Cape Mining Company will also make application for mining licenses and go outside to the market and find investors, galvanize for resources in order for us to have mining activities in the province, where as the province and the provincial government will have a leverage through the work of the Northern Cape Mining Company. Many who looks at it, they think that we want to disturb the mining environment in the province. We are not competing, we are adding value to an already existing mining process in the province. We are actually adding value. Because one of the biggest challenges that we are sitting with as the province is that we don't have a comprehensive understanding of the mineral endowment that we have. We need comprehensive understanding of what do we have and where is it that it is economically feasible to do extraction. That's what we need to know. So that is what this Northern Cape Mining Company will be doing. It will do prospecting, identify where the deposits are expecting it to do exploration, do the drill, take samples, take them for laboratory tests, and tell us exactly what is the tonnage and what is the grade. And the same company's responsibility should be to do some feasibility studies, to look at the economic feasibility of having to do an extraction. And then with that information, which will form part and parcel of our investment book, we'll go to investors right all over the world. We'll go to investors in the country, we'll go to investors all over the world. And not just tell investors that we're a mineral-rich province, but we are going to tell them exactly these are the minerals that we have. And it's economically feasible to do extraction of these minerals. This is the lifespan, this is the tonnage and grade that we have. That information we don't have in the provincial government, because mining is an exclusive jurisdiction of national government, and we don't have an active role that we can play in that space. But lacking that role that we can play as the province into that space has got a negative impact on us, because mining is one of the biggest contributors to the GDP of the province, and I don't think it's time for us to complain and complain and complain, but it's time for us to take active steps to enable us to put up such a Northern Cape State Mining Company. And with the help of the national government and the help of the provincial offices which are here, we firmly believe that that's something that we can do, and it will be to the best interest of the people of the Northern Cape.
No, thanks for that. And who does the mining? And what happens to the revenues?
No, Jeff, what will happen? It's possible that the Northern Cape Mining Company will never mine. It's possible that it will never get into the stage where there's the actual development and extraction of minerals, which will be done. It's an enabler, that's what it will be. It is an enabler which will give the Northern Cape provincial government the leverage for us to be able to play a much more active role in the mining sector of the province.
No, thanks for that. And who does the mining? And what happens to the revenues?
No, check. What will happen? It's possible that the Northern Cape Mining Company will never mine. It's possible that it will never get into the stage where there's the actual development and extraction of minerals, which will be done. It's an enabler. That's what it will be. It is an enabler which will give the Northern Cape provincial government the leverage for us to be able to play a much more active role in the mining sector in the province.
No, thanks for that, Premier. I think, as I said, there was a lot of confusion. I think it's not so much confusion; it's more lack of detail.
Yes.
And thanks for sharing that with us. And we agree, because unless you are in control of these processes, you can then dictate what happens to the end result. And I think that's one of the errors. I think two more things. You mentioned the issue of youth unemployment, and there's another elephant in the room, which is women in mining. I know there are a lot. In fact, we'll be having an interview with the CEO of Vedanta, who happens to be the chairperson of women in mining. But we want to know what plans are there for youth. The Premier mentioned the high unemployment rate amongst our youth, which is a ticking time bomb, unfortunately. Are there any practical steps that you are taking in addressing, especially the women in mining and the youth in mining programs?
Check, youth unemployment is a national crisis, and it's also a crisis here in the province, and where almost 50% of our youth workforce is unemployed. And you've got also the issue of women economic empowerment, because we are coming from an apartheid system which treated women as minors and put them in a serious position of disadvantage. So we need to develop programs to ensure that we assist young people in the province. And there's multi-pronged approach that we are going to take as the province, whilst at the same time looking for formal employment for young people and throwing some young people into training programs. But also what is important is the issue of youth entrepreneurship, which is very critical at ensuring that we grow the economy. If you get one young person who opens a small business and appoints 2-3 people to work with, that would add so much value in our work to ensure that we reduce the levels of youth unemployment in the province. So what we are looking at, and that's work which is the Department of Economic Development is looking at, is putting up of business incubation centers, where we are going to take young people on board, give them the necessary training, give them the necessary exposure, and give them funding to open some small business enterprises for them to be able to take 1 or 2 young people on board. But this time around, these small business enterprises which young people should put up, it should be sustainable. It should be once-off funding, and they should be able to stand on their own. And with the business incubation center, the responsibility would be to take them through and empower them, give them all the necessary training around how to manage the finances and all of that. So we are looking at that. But also one of the programs that we are focusing on is post-matric training. In the Northern Cape, it's 7% of the population that has got post-matric qualification. And then your biggest contributor to high levels of youth unemployment is inadequate education and as well as lack of skills. 73% of the unemployed in the Northern Cape is due to the years of schooling and lack of skills. That's 73% of the unemployed young people. They are unemployed because of the years of schooling and lack of skills. So if we want to make a dent with regard to the high levels of unemployment, we have to have a concerted, highly coordinated attack on lack of education and lack of skills. And that's where we are going to direct most of our resources as well, to ensure that we subject young people to adequate training so that they can go and look for jobs anywhere they want to look for jobs. And as well as we need to improve the quality of our education system in the Northern Cape, so that we get out of the current education system future smart learners would be able to navigate their way in a much more digitalized world, and taking into cognizance the challenges of the fourth industrial revolution. So our approach basically is immediately taking into cognizance the immediacy of today, that young people are unemployed. Look at the creation of job opportunities, strengthen the learnership programs, strengthen the internship programs, get the private sector involved in order to create opportunities for young people as well in the province. But also linked to that is the issue of creating platforms for training of young people. There's lots of young people who have passed grade 12 who are just moving up and down, and they don't have any form of employment, but they don't have any form of post-matric training. That is the reason why we are focusing at giving them also some form of training that would be able to enable them to get some kind of jobs.
I think just lastly, there are two more things we wanted to talk about. One of them is the unfortunate instance of the Section 106 report at the Soplaki Municipality, which creates an impression that corruption could be the order of the day in some of our institutions. What has the Honorable Premier done to ensure that the matter is addressed in a manner that ensures that some of these issues, if they are indeed, if they did indeed happen, are not repeated? Because Soplaki Municipality in the last few weeks, unfortunately, has had land grabs. We've had the situation of the artisanal miners where you've had to intervene. The issue of the potholes, I think some are actually arguing that the sparkling city has lost its spark. What interventions from your side have you put in place to ensure that that situation is reversed?
Check let me first start with the issue of land grabs. We had engagement with Soplaki Municipality basically on all these issues that you raised. And the reason why we prioritize Soplaki Municipality is simply because our only secondary seat in the province, which is Kimberley, is located within Soplaki Municipality. And we shared a vision of a modern, growing and successful province. And we firmly believe that Kimberley, as a city, only city in the province, should become the anchor of that vision. In order for us to have a modern, growing and successful province, it should start first here in Kimberley, which is our capital city. That's the reason why we've opened up a platform of engagement with the local municipality. We have all of them here, and we had engagements on how best to ensure that we get Soplaki Municipality functioning and functioning very well, in order for us to ensure that there is growth and development in our capital city. Because just Soplaki Municipality, the population is between 300,000 to 400,000. If you make injections into infrastructure projects, you create much more investment for Soplaki Municipality. Immediately, you touch about 1/3 of the population of the province. That's the advantage that we have. That's a planning advantage that we have. There's no other province with that advantage. We're just in one municipality. If you bring about massive infrastructure programs, you bring about massive investment, you create much more job opportunities, you create vibrancy and dynamism in the economy of Soplaki. That in itself, immediately you touch about 1/3 of the population of the province. So that's the advantage that we have, and we have to exploit that advantage. And that's the reason why, if we want to create a modern, growing and successful province, it starts here in Soplaki. Hence the engagements that we had with the municipality. But let me start with the issue of land grabs. And I can better explain this thing by explaining the nature of a post-colonial society. You see, if you take these problems lightly, in terms of what you see, you might end up with a problem of misinterpretation, misanalysis, and coming up with wrong solutions. All post-colonial society, they are characterized by two trends. It's a trend of formality and informality. South Africa is a post-colonial society. There is formal economy in South Africa, there is informal economy. There is formal settlement, there is informal settlement. There is formal education, there is informal education. There is formal healthcare services, there is informal healthcare services, where people would go to sangomas. Formal simply means that you get a highly regulated environment, and informal you get a less regulated environment. So if you look at what is actually happening now here in Solplaat, you've got people who are staying in informal settlements, highly regulated settlements, which are formal. You've got people who are staying in informal settlements, which are not regulated settlements. That is the nature of all post-colonial society right all over the world. It's not something special with Solplaat. So what is important is for the provincial government, including the municipality, to develop some intervention mechanisms to support people who are in informal environment. Whether it's informal business, you go to Khaleshiwe, you go to Rodepan, there are people who are in business there, informal business because it's not regulated. You come to town, you find formal business. People who are in business, highly regulated environment, who are paying taxes, there's certain laws and bylaws that applies to them. But you go to the location, you will find out that there's a great deal of informality. So that's the nature, that's the character of a post-colonial society. So what we should not do is to run a risk of criminalizing informality. That's the risk we should not run, where when people put up an informal settlement, we criminalize their effort to shelter themselves. Because there's structural challenges which are causing such problems. Let me give you an example in the Northern Cape in terms of formal earths in the Northern Cape. 83% of earths in the Northern Cape belong to whites, which constitute only 7% of the population. And 93% of the population, which is your blacks, which is your African, coloreds, and Indians, they only account for less than 15% of the earths. Yes, 93% of the population accounts for less than 15% of the earths. 7% of the population accounts for 83% of the earth. So when you go then to black areas, you get households with high numbers of people who are staying there. You'll get into an RDP house, or you'll get into a house in Khaleshiwe, you'll find out there's about 6-5 families in one house. It's my uncle with his wife and children, it's my niece with his wife and children, and it's my brother with his wives and children. Just in one household, you get about 5-6 families. So we should then understand the issue of land grabs and the issue of mushrooming informal settlements within that context, where the current households, they burst, they can't accommodate this high number of families within one household. So it's the element of informality in a post-colonial society. So as the government, both the provincial government and the local municipalities, we should understand that dynamic, and our responsibility is to facilitate housing. Where we can't give RDP houses, we've got inadequate resources, we need to facilitate housing. I was speaking to the MEC for Public Works, and I asked him, give me an account of what land do we have as the provincial government. And he gave me a report on what land do we have as the provincial government. And I said to him, give that land to municipalities, so that municipalities can facilitate the issue of housing, and particularly for the previously disadvantaged. So we should have expected what is happening in Khaleshiwe, because in the Northern Cape, right here in the Northern Cape, 83% of earths are owned by 7% of the population, and 93% of the population accounts for less than 15% of the earth. That is a structural challenge that we need to address, and we need to address it urgently. If we don't address it urgently, there will be more land grabs. And the only call we can make to our people is that they should be patient with us as we look at alternative ways of ensuring that we create much more housing opportunities for them.
The other misconception was on the issue of I think from the State of the Province address, the de-tenderization system of infrastructure. Can Prina please explain exactly how it works?
No, Thanks for the opportunity to have to explain it. Check our biggest problem. I think basically the problem which is there also in other provinces, which could be a challenge, which is also there with the national government. It's not only a problem that is here in the Northern Cape. Is the fact that as the provincial government, we are running massive infrastructure programs. And with an inquiry which I made from Treasury, they told me that just for this financial year, our infrastructure budget is about 4 billion rand. But when I asked them, where is this infrastructure budget located? So they will tell you the infrastructure budget is located in the Department of Education, is located in the Department of Human Settlement, is located in the Department of Health, is located in the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. So you've got an infrastructure budget that is located in a whole lot of departments. And each department with a splinter of capacity around implementation of infrastructure projects. So the decision then that we took in order to ensure that there is much greater efficiency and effectiveness in the implementation of this infrastructure project is to get all infrastructure projects in the province under one roof and capacitate that infrastructure unit. Because one of the biggest problems that we've been encountering over the past years is that because of infrastructure projects implementation capacity located right all over the different departments, we've got splinters of this capacity in different departments. That in itself has got a negative impact on our capacity to effectively implement infrastructure program, and with a whole host of cost overruns. Let me give you an example of the mental health hospital. We started implementing that mental health hospital in 2008. We only finished that project this year. The initial budget for the mental health hospital was 300 million. That was the initial budget. When we finished the mental health implementation of that project this year, it costed the provincial government about 1.1 billion. Which means with what we spent there, we could have been able to build 2 extra hospitals of the same magnitude and capacity. So instead of us finishing that project within the prescribed time with 300 million rand, we finished that project over a period of about 10 years with cost overruns of more than 800 million rand. And if you analyze what is the actual problem, that you had the Department of Health involved, you had the Department of Public Works involved, you had the contractor involved. I don't know how many times they changed the contractor on site. I think it was almost 4 or 5 times. And that came with a whole host of cost overruns, which cost the provincial government plus 800 million rand, money which we don't have. So we'll have to find a different way of implementation of infrastructure programs. Hence, the proposal that we are working on is that let's get all our infrastructure projects under one roof, so that we don't have Department of Health getting diverted from its core mandate of providing healthcare services to the people of the Northern Cape, also focusing on infrastructure program. All of us, we should focus on our core mandates and have one unit that will be responsible for the implementation of infrastructure programs. But linked to that is one of the proposals that we are exploring and seriously and vigorously exploring, the establishment of a state construction company. There's a team that is working on that. They are basically looking at different scenarios. But the primary mandate of the state mining company, state construction company, over the next 5, 6, 7 years, is to ensure that about 30% of our infrastructure budget, we should be able to implement it ourselves. And then about 70%, and then we can go out for private contractors and private sector to assist us to implementation. But for the next 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, we can actually target that 30% of our infrastructure budget should be implemented by the state construction company, which we should establish as the province. But let me tell you what are the advantages then of establishing a state construction company. If you establish a state construction company that will primarily focus on RDP houses and roads, that would definitely guarantee the people of the province much better quality RDP houses. Because some of the quality of the RDP houses that we come across here in this province, it's something that we can be proud of. And number two, we can use the state construction company as a platform for training of young people. It could be a training institution itself, where we take young people on board, give them work opportunities, and at the same time give them the much needed training and skilling of young people in the Northern Cape. So that's basically what we are looking at. And the primary objective around this is to increase our efficiency. I met with a team from the Department of Housing and Cooperative Governance and Human Settlements. They told me, over the past 25 years, we managed to build about 25 RDP houses. Over the past 25 years, we managed to build 68,000 RDP houses. That's what they told me when I met with a team from Human Settlements. I asked them, but we've been here in government for the past 25 years. How many houses did you manage to build? They said, 68,000 houses that we managed to build. And then the simple question I asked them, can you take me to a house which was built by the provincial government? Then we say, this house was built by them. No, all of them. It's private service providers, it's contractors. So we can't be speaking of a developmental state that does not have capacity to build a single RDP house. And we say we are busy building a developmental state. And a developmental state is a product of construction and reconstruction. We need to build and be conscious about building a developmental state with adequate capacity. At least this time around, what we are looking at is to build a developmental state with capacity to intervene in the economy, and as well as with capacity to implement some of the critical infrastructure projects.
And what you're proposing is nothing different from what's happening in China and other...
Yes, it's happening in many countries, yes.
Yeah. Premier, thanks a million for your time.
And thanks for the difficult questions.
Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more.